he's just basically like, you're going to jail.
He's like, son, if you're going to do it right.
I made a conscious decision to defraud one of the largest tech companies in the world.
I don't know how many times. Here's what you may not know.
Han shot first.
Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay. Now I look like Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. Obviously, you like looking at starfishes. I get it. Bend over, squat, cough. And I looked at him, I was like, if I do that, a pea's going to fall out.
We are at your residence and have a warrant for your arrest. You need to call us.
Did you ask him which residence?
He's like, yeah, everybody there volunteered to arrest you for no pay. She's doing 90. And in my back of my mind, I'm like, who races to prison?
We got to get this some there. Greg, we love you, but we got to do today. There ain't no way I'm going to slice my wrist with a happy time razor. If you've not been through this yet, chances are you're going to go through it before this life ends.
Your past cannot define you without your consent.
Johnson, former United States Most Wanted Cybercriminal, now good guy, and host of The Brett Johnson Show. Today's episode is a good one. Today's episode, we're talking to Craig Stanland. So who on earth is Craig Stanland? Well, he's a former felon, but that's not the important part. The important part is Craig is a man who has turned his life around, and he's turned his life around starting while in prison. As a matter of fact, and what caused me to want to bring him on the show is he says that he found his value while in prison. Now, why do I want to talk to him? I'll tell you why I want to talk to him, because here's the thing. I sometimes miss prison. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Now, that does not mean I want to go back to prison. Hell no, shit no, no way. I don't want to go back, but there's things that I miss about prison, and the camaraderie, the not having to worry about paying your bills, about the distractions of the outside world. Now, there are things you have to worry about in prison. You have to worry about riots. Every Sunday, you have to worry about avoiding sexual assault, things like that. Not really, but there are things you have to worry about in prison. But there's an honesty in prison that is hard to appreciate unless you've been there. Everyone there knows their place. Everyone there knows you're all kind of on the same playing field. That's what's really interesting. And while it's a place filled with liars, amongst those liars, there's a truth there that's hard to attain in the physical world. And I wanted to talk to Craig about his prison experience, about how he turned his life around, about what he's doing today. Now, before we get to that, we're going to talk about some stuff that's going on in the headlines. So here's the thing. I'm a big film geek. I'm also a big video game geek, although I don't get to play a lot of games a lot of the time. I've got all the gaming systems. I've got, I think I've got like 1,500 games total spread across all these platforms. I don't really get to play games. I keep buying the games because I hope at some point in time I will get to play them. To give you a clue, I actually just... in the month of December, I decided, hey, I'm going to take some time off. I'm going to sit back and I'm going to play me a game. So I fired up the Nintendo Switch and I finally started to play Breath of the Wild, the Link's Adventure thing, and outstanding game, but I had owned that thing since it came out. I just hadn't had a chance to play it. Love the friggin' game. It's outstanding. If you've not played it, play it. The CEO of Ubisoft. I don't know, but I guess that's the CEO. Tremblay's the guy's name. He comes out the other day, and the weird thing is sometimes somebody will tell the truth, and people really don't like that sometimes. Well, Tremblay actually tells the truth. He says, hey, what's going to happen is we're going to get to the point where you don't own any of the media that you like to watch or listen to. As a matter of fact, if you think about music, it's already there. We don't own CDs anymore. We stream the stuff through Spotify or YouTube or iTunes or what have you. We don't own the music. Movies are much the same way. We've got streaming platforms now. We've got Amazon, we've got Hulu. I don't know who the hell watches Hulu, but we've got Hulu. We've got Netflix, which, let's be honest, Netflix is kind of like the latrine of content right now. So you've got these streaming platforms. We really don't own a lot of our films anymore, or a lot of our TV series, but we used to. We used to have DVDs and Blu-rays, and we still got Blu-rays. Best Buy recently, they decided they're going to stop selling Blu-rays. The reason I think this is important, and Tremblay tells the truth, we're absolutely going to get to that part, but why I think that's important, when we no longer have access, when we no longer own these things, what happens when a company decides that they're going to remove it from the market? Something that we have enjoyed, or something that we think is important, or they're going to change it. And I mention that because, hey, if you're not aware, George Lucas has changed Star Wars, I don't know how many times. Here's what you may not know.
Han shot first.
Exactly. Han absolutely shot first. Greedo did not shoot first. Greedo was a peaceful person. He was a pacifist. He was just sitting there having a friendly conversation, and here comes Han Solo blowing the dude away. What's interesting is, if you're looking to watch the original Star Wars as it was presented in the theaters, Star Wars Empire and Return. If you're looking to watch that, do you know the only place you can find that these days? Laserdisc has them, and there was a THX version released on VHS. VHS. They have never been released on DVD, Blu-ray, streaming, anything else like that. Now think about that for a second. You could no longer watch, on modern technology, you could no longer watch the original Star Wars films. You get the special editions. Let's be honest, they suck. It gets worse than that. I'm a big fan. When I was a criminal, I had a $30,000 DVD collection. I wanted to have a reference library so that I could pull any type of film shot that I wanted to pull. So I had the Riefenstahl film, Leni Riefenstahl, which is Triumph of the Will. It's a Nazi film, all right? Riefenstahl was the filmmaker for Adolf Hitler. Now, why is that film important? That film's important if you've ever watched Star Wars, because that whole end scene, that scene comes from Triumph of the Will. So I wanted to have these original shots so that if I ever wanted to reference them, because I fancied myself a bit of a screenwriter, if I ever wanted to reference them, I could just pull the shot, look at it, and go from there. I'm not a huge fan of Disney, but there's a film called Song of the South, which, if you've ever been to Disney World, Splash Mountain, Briar Rabbit, that's Song of the South. Have you ever seen Song of the South? Probably you've not. Now, why haven't you seen it? Well, it turns out that it is a very good film, but it also turns out that, it's an embarrassment for Disney because all the slaves run around singing zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay, my oh my, do what massa say. That's the problem. It really glorifies slavery. It says, hey, they didn't have a bad time at all. As a matter of fact, they enjoyed it. Because it says that, Disney has been very adamant about getting it removed from the market. Now, whether you agree with that or not, and, hey, I understand. I do. But at the same time, I want to be able to see that film. Put whatever disclaimer you want to on it, whatever else like that. I want to know what goes on in that film, because it's one of these films that mixes live action with animation. One of the first films to ever do that. So I want to be able to see things like that. Well, you can't get that film unless your ass goes on the pirate networks and decides to download it. And I have seen it, if that gives you any clue on anything. The point that I'm making is that when we no longer own the songs, the movies, the TV series, the books, anything else that we would like to read, it's very easy for the powers that be to remove or alter those things. And that becomes very problematic after a while. Now, how does that actually end? I don't know. I think that Tremblay is absolutely right. I think that we are absolutely going to get to the point where we no longer own anything at all. And I think this is where piracy comes in. You know, the streaming networks, Netflix specifically, pretty much killed piracy because it was the only streaming platform. It was much cheaper to pay, $12 a month and try to get a VPN and hit the torrents and download the torrents onto whatever hard drive you had and whatever. It was much easier to just go with Netflix. Then as more streaming services popped up, they got more expensive over time. Piracy starts to come back into vogue after a while. So nowadays you've got a lot more torrent sites and people are downloading a lot more content because you can no longer go to one centralized streaming location and get content fairly cheaply. As we start to understand that we no longer own our own media, like video games, for example, a lot of the old Nintendo games, you cannot play on modern platforms. You can't do it. You have to have the old, virtual Game Boys or Game Boy Advance or whatever to play a lot of that software. So I'm thinking that as it becomes more common that we no longer own these things, and as we look back in our past and want to have this content, play the games, read the books, watch the films, listen to the music, what have you, I think we're going to see a new renaissance in piracy. I absolutely do. I don't think it's right, but I think that's what's going to happen. That being said, let's carry on and talk about today's Art of Accountability segment. All right, on today's Art of Accountability segment, I said earlier, hey, sometimes I miss prison. Here's the thing. I wanted to talk a bit today. I'm bringing in Craig Stanland, and Craig says that he found his value while in federal prison. He's going to come in, he's going to tell us his story, he's going to talk about how that happened, that entire growth arc that I assume he's still undergoing. But for me, my story is different, but the events that those road marks are not that much different. It's about, to me, it was about finding my center without the distractions of the world. Now, in prison, you can absolutely find any distraction that you want to find within reason. When I was arrested, it was a shock to me. My initial, I had served like 3 months before for a charity scam, but this was different. I knew I was going to be doing significant time, and the first 3 months of lockup before the Secret Service got me out and I decided to rip them off and then go on the run and then make the United States Most Wanted list and then go to Disney World and then go to prison and escape from prison. Before all of that, my initial arrest was February 8th, 2005, and I was held in a county jail for 90 days, and man, I went through it. I mean, I was this guy that was crying all the time. I guess they fingerprinted me like 40, 60 times, some shit like that. It was like 2 to 3 times a day that I had new charges coming in, and they were taking me out every single time you get a new charge. They call your name over the intercom, and you march your ass down to the front, and they fingerprint you. And it was 2 to 3 times a day because I had a lot of charges. And I was, constantly in tears, crying, just distraught. I went through it. And it wasn't until I went to, after I ripped off the Secret Service, got caught, and they locked me away, and they weren't about to let me out on any bond or anything like that. It was at that point that I was at a county jail in Lexington, South Carolina. That's right outside of Columbia. And there was this guy that he had served like 20 some years. He was coming down. That's what you call it when you've been at that, the penitentiary, and you're about to get out, and you've got to do whatever bullshit, jump through whatever hoops you've got to jump through in order to get out. He had some pending charges that he was just going to court and they were going to dismiss, but he had served over 20 years. And one of the fortunate things about me in prison is I always had people that would take me in under their wing, give me advice. This is how you need to present yourself. This is how you need to jail, Brett. No, don't do that shit. You're going to get killed. This guy took me in under his wing, and he pulls me off to the side, and he's like, Brett, use prison as a positive experience. Whatever you don't like about yourself, you can change. Don't get your ass in there and don't gamble and don't start running with gangs and all this bullshit, but do something positive because, hey, you're going to serve some time. And that always stuck with me. Now, there are distractions in prison. Absolutely. There are. You can gamble. You can gamble and get your ass in debt and beaten after a while. You can chase cigarettes around on the compound because in federal prison, tobacco is outlawed. So you get this entire demographic of people that chase cigarettes. Like sometimes guards can smoke, but inmates can't. So what happens some of the time is you'll see a guard smoking. These guys will follow the guard around as he's smoking. The guard smokes his cigarette, gets it down to the butt, flicks it away someplace. Well, the inmate at that point will wait until the guard gets out of, eyesight, and will walk over and get the butt and start collecting butts. And then once they get enough, they take them all apart, get the leftover tobacco out of it, and start rolling the tobacco in Bible pages or toilet paper or what have you at that point in time. So there's always a chase for cigarettes, or you bribe a guard to bring a carton of cigarettes in. So a carton of cigarettes is $1,000 behind the fence. $7 a cigarette is what that is what it breaks down to. And you pay for cigarettes with stamps because that's the currency. You either have stamps that you pay for it with or what's called mackerel money. So you get these packets of tuna like you see in the grocery store, these aluminum packets. You get mackerel like that. They go for $1 a pop, and you give so many packs of mackerel for a cigarette. And a cigarette depends on the type that you're buying, right? So a whole cigarette, that shit will run you $7 to $10. Most of the time you break one cigarette down into 2 or 3. You roll them up at that point in time. Those things will sell for $3 to $5 a pop at that point. The reason that's trouble is because, drugs in prison, yeah, you can get them, but why are you going to worry about drugs if you make as much or more money with just tobacco? The only person that's really going to get in trouble is the guard that's bringing in the shit to you. All right. So there's a huge tobacco trade in there. You get a lot of people that go into debt for this stuff. A lot of people, they really want their cigarettes. So they'll, go to the guy that's selling them, the store that's selling them, the inmate, and they'll, on the books. Yeah, let me get another one, man. Let me get another one, until you find out this guy owes maybe $500 or $600. He ain't got it. Well, how do you collect at that point in time? Well, you collect it by getting your ass beaten is what happens. If not killed is what happens. There's these distractions, not just those types of distractions, but you can spend your time watching TV. You can spend your time listening to music. You can spend your time just working out 24/7. So there's all types of distractions. You can spend your time wallowing in self-pity. Oh my God, I cannot believe that I'm in prison. I didn't do anything. I didn't deserve it. I don't need to be here. I don't belong with these people. There's all kinds of things that distract you. What's important, and it's in it's a free world as well. It's in the free world as well. What's important is that one finds their center. And what I mean by that, you hear all these little sayings. You have to make yourself happy before you make anyone else happy. You hear all these sayings. And to me, the idea is that for me, it was accepting responsibility. It was putting a lot of thought into who I was, what I had done, how I'd gotten there. And there was some self-pity in there too. I mean, it absolutely starts out with that. But I think the idea being is that, hey, yeah, it's okay to start with self-pity, but at some point you've got to decide that you're going to act and do something. And I think in order to act and do something, you have to be centered in that. So you have to know who you are, or at least have a good idea, or at least want to know who you are, and then proceed to go about finding that, all right, without engaging in those distractions. Now, sure, I worked out. I don't look like it now. I look like a ball of cotton now. But back when I got out, man, I was all right. I had that prison physique. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Not now. Now I look like a Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. Back then, I was all right. But at the same time, I spent hours a day just thinking about and considering who I wanted to be, who I was, who I had been, how to change that, and then not only thinking about it, but acting on it as well. On today's Brett Johnson Show, we are talking to Craig Stanland. As I said at the top of the show, he is a former felon. That is not the important part. The important part to me is, and I'm going to read this, I think he says this on his LinkedIn page. He says that he found his value while in prison. He's got a book called Blank Canvas, How I Reinvented My Life After Prison. Now, here's the thing. If you guys didn't know, and I hope you knew, I'm a cybersecurity guy because I used to be a cyber criminal, like top of the heap cyber criminal. That's what pays the bills. What I'm more interested in is turning my own life around, becoming a better person every single day, and talking to people who have done the same. Craig seems to have had a prison experience, which was a bit of an epiphany for him. I am a bit of a slow learner. People who know my story know that it took a little while longer, that I got out of prison planning to do the exact same damn thing again. Craig's not like that. Craig is, by all accounts, he's an outstanding human being. And I wanted to bring him on the show today so he could share his story, so we could talk about some of the prison experience, how one turns their life around, how one finds value even in the worst and darkest of places. And I don't think there's a better person on this planet to talk to than Craig Stanland about that. Craig, thank you so much for coming on the Brett Johnson Show.
Brett, thank you so much for having me. And that's a hell of an intro that I have to live up to now.
Well, you know, we set the bar high.
You really did. I love that you said that. You know, that's not, the felon part's not the important part for your story and for my story. And I think that's so critical for people to know.
It's not. It's not. I mean, hey, let's be honest. You screwed up. All right.
I made a conscious decision to defraud one of the largest tech companies in the world. You know, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that.
Well, you know, and my dad, he used to tell me, son, he was talking about breaking the law. He was like, son, if you're going to do it right. So, you know, I like to think that, Dad, I did it right. Just for the audience, I want them to know what happened. But we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on that at all. Okay. I watched your TED Talk. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about how you found your value in prison. But I guess the first thing I want to ask is, you know, what the hell happened, man?
It's a great starting point. So we're going to have to go back in time a little bit.
Sure.
Let's go back to September 30th, 2013. September 30th, 2013, I have it all. I have, you know, what most people would say was the American dream. I owned 4 homes. I drove the BMWs. I had the 5-figure watches. I had the successful corporate career.
What was your favorite watch?
Panerai. I was a fan of Panerais.
I'll tell you what, I've actually got a Panerai.
Do you? Which one?
I've got the Navy SEALs one. They only made 660 of them. Came out this past year. Yeah, because I'm that idiot that has too much disposable income sometimes, and I piss my wife off when I bring something like that in.
It's a beautiful watch, though.
It is. It's great.
You know, I would buy and sell them, but at one time I would have, 4 or 5 Panerais, the Omegas, the Zeniths. I had my eyes on the Patek Philippe and the Lange & Stone. You know, it's starting to go bigger and bigger.
I had to steal my first Patek Philippe. Same thing for the Rolex. I stole my first. I don't buy Rolex anymore. I don't. I like Omega still. I like Grand Seiko a lot right now.
Really
I love Tudor as well.
One of my clients, we had a barter system. He is a watch guy. So with the work that I did, we got him into his love of watches. And so we did a barter, and I actually have a, I wish I knew the year, but I think it's early 90s, mini Tudor sub. And it's just a really cool watch. It's, it's small. It's probably only like 34 millimeters. So compared to the Panerai, it's much different, but just real elegant and just a really nice sub.
Nice. I like that. All right. So you were the watch guy. You still like watches, I see. Nothing wrong with that. And so you have 4 homes. Jesus Christ.
I had 4 homes. Lived in one.
You go sleep in one at a time.
When my grandmother, she passed a few years back, but she suffered from dementia. And I went to go visit her in the home, and she didn't quite remember me. Okay. And my aunt said, she's like, oh, Craig is here. Craig's doing really well. He owns 4 homes. And in her dementia state, she looks up at me and she goes, what are you going to do with all those homes? She had a moment of perfect clarity through her dementia. What are you going to do with all those?
Right.
But yes, I had September 30th. I mean, I had it all. I was married, the successful corporate career. And then on October 1st, 2013, I had just started a brand new job. Our biggest competitor wooed me away with an aggressive pay package. 2 weeks into the job, I show up in my office in Manhattan. I'm setting up my desk for the day. And as I'm setting it up, I put my phone on the desk. And I realized there's a missed call and a voicemail. And so I put it to my ear and I listened to it. And this is what I heard. Mr. Stanland, this is Special Agent McTiernan with the FBI. We are at your residence and have a warrant for your arrest. You need to call us.
Did you ask him which residence?
I wish I had the wherewithal for that. He continued, like, we're going to issue, if you don't call us back immediately and come home, we're issuing a warrant with the federal marshals. So, I mean, just all the air in the room vanished. You know, I mean, I had gone up 37 floors to my office. My heart and stomach fell those 37 floors. I was panicked.
Right.
You know, I mean, amid all of this inner turmoil, my heart spoke and it just said, I told you so. You know, so I had for just under a year, about 10 and a half months, I defrauded Cisco Systems. I took advantage of their service contract policy.
Okay.
Yeah.
But,
I started
so warranty
at the bottom
fraud,
of the
right?
company. It was a warranty fraud, exactly.
Advanced replacement or what?
Bingo.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was that's exactly right. So I purchased.
I've been guilty of that. I've done that.
So it's funny. You and I have both been guests on the James Altucher show.
Right.
And when I was on with James, he was like, wait, let me figure this out. And he put the pieces together of what I did.
So where were you getting the serial numbers, or was it just you figured out the algorithm for serial numbers?
I actually purchased a Cisco contract. I purchased a Cisco router. And then all of the things that go in that router are covered by that one serial number. So I had the serial number. So I had that. And I realized that I could, I think you know with Cisco, when they send you a brand new piece of equipment, you have to ship the faulty one back. Right. Well, I realized I could buy old equipment on eBay for less than I could sell the brand new piece of equipment for. So there was a delta between the two. That was my profit margin. Okay. So I started with just one service contract and one device, and it worked really, really well. I mean, it worked swimmingly well. Right. And then I scaled to 3 devices and contracts. Then I'd scale to 5. I eventually had about 18 different service contracts, 18 different routers, shipping to 4 different locations, fake company names, aliases, you know, the whole nine.
So this is not just, you know, spur of the moment or a whim. You planned this stuff out.
It took me about 4.5 months to put the puzzle pieces together to make this all work. I looked like I kind of kid. You know, Russell Crowe in A Beautiful Mind. Right. You know, he's got Post-it notes all over the place. I was working from home before we were all working from home, but I had like Post-it notes everywhere. I had journals just trying to figure this thing out. And it was a good 4.5 months of putting it together. Okay.
So let me ask you, and I appreciate you being honest about that. Come from a good family?
Very much so.
Okay. Had you committed crime before?
Petty stuff as a kid that I never got caught for, but you know,
just small stuff.
Small stuff.
So what was the catalyst that caused you? Because I've been guilty of some shit too. I mean, that's a very methodic way to commit a very successful type of fraud. So what was the catalyst that caused you to do that?
This is a great question. It's a very deep question. There's a lot of components to it. I'm going to make sure that I, address all of them. Sure. But the quickest, shortest version is it was just the most twisted cocktail of hubris, inadequacy, and self-sabotage. I mean, really, that's what it comes down to. But so I was very successful. I was making a lot of money. I was making over $400,000 a year. Mm-hmm. And I had just started dating somebody who eventually would become my wife. And
it's always a woman.
I'm not saying that. I showed her this lifestyle. We're going up and down. Greenwich, Connecticut. We're going up and down Greenwich Avenue, buying the Christian Louis Vuittons and the Jimmy Choos and having champagne lunches.
Oh, don't even get me started on Jimmy Choo. I hate that sumbitch.
Oh, now when I'm a little bit removed, can't stand all those things. I see those red bottom shoes with the Christian Louis Vuittons. I'm like, those are the dumbest things ever. You know, you see them on TV watching like a Real Housewives show, and they're all like flashing their red bottom shoes. You know, so we're living this massive lifestyle, and I really set that bar so unbelievably high. Well, Cisco's products at the time, this was right after the financial crisis in 2008, 2009, you know, 2007, 2009. The products were becoming more commoditized.
Right.
So the deals, my margins on my deals were getting razor thin. So my paychecks are getting impacted. Well, also, I'm walking up and down Greenwich Avenue, living up this crazy lifestyle with her. You would think maybe I'm doing that on a Saturday and Sunday, like a lot of normal people. I'm doing it on Monday through Friday, including Saturday and Sunday. So I worked with the largest financial institutions in the world, the largest banks, the largest hedge funds. These are clients that demand a certain level of service, and I'm not giving to them. So my paychecks start falling. And I feel that I have this major problem on my hands. All I had to do was honestly have a conversation with myself first and foremost to say, you know, this isn't working anymore. It's untenable. I need to figure something out. I could have had a conversation with my wife saying, my paychecks are shrinking. I cannot afford this lifestyle. But the fact of the matter is I was so deathly afraid of being seen as less than, as being seen as inadequate, because I thought my worth and my value was intrinsically interwoven with my lifestyle and my ability to buy that lifestyle. So my identity was being threatened by these shrinking paychecks. And honestly, I didn't like my job at all. I hated my job. I hated working with these people. The finance people, not all of you, I don't want anybody, I don't want emails coming through, but a lot of them can be arrogant asses. And, I'm dealing with, like I said, the largest hedge funds in the world. Not always the friendliest people to deal with. I hated the job. I loved the lifestyle it afforded me. But what I always wanted to do, and this is the self-sabotage portion of it, I wanted to write. I wanted to innovate. I wanted to be an entrepreneur before everybody was an entrepreneur. I wanted to have a much different life path than the life path I was on, but I was too deathly afraid to give it up. So you combine all of those things, and they came out to that very intentional and that very deliberate action that I took to commit fraud, to take that 4.5 months to string it all together.
So here's with me with when I started to steal massive amounts of money, and I used to joke about this. Like I said, I was a slow learner. In prison, they taught you sit down in federal prison. They make you take these exit classes with you have to come up with a budget. What job are you going to get? How much money are you going to make? And where's the money going to go? They don't tell your ass that, hey, yeah, we're having you sit down and doing this, but you ain't getting a job when you get out. So that budget you're coming up with don't mean shit. But I used to tell people that, my budget when I was a criminal, I didn't have a budget. If I needed more money, I'd just steal more money. But I also got to the point where money didn't have value to me anymore. We were talking watches. I had just on a whim, didn't even like the damn watch, but I saw this Chanel J23, the ceramic watch, and just a crap watch. Let's be honest, it was. But they had taken the band and the bezel and they had put 22 carats of diamonds all the way around it. And I was like, I think I'd like to have that. Couldn't wear it. It's something that a rapper would have to wear, but I had it in the house. And if anyone came by to visit, I'd get it down and show it to them. Look at this little thing, just for the hell of it. And I still remember money not having any value. You talked about, and yes, we both know it's not really the woman, but it's with me, my value at that point in time, my value was not intrinsic. My value was external, specifically with those relationships that I was engaged in. And like you said, it was Saturday and Sunday you might be able to afford, but with me, it was 7 days a week that you would go out and do this stuff. I'm wondering if when you were stealing the money that you were stealing, if you got to that same point where you forgot the value of money because you had so much that started to come in.
I want to think about this for a second. I don't think I lost the value of money. I changed the meaning of money.
Okay.
And
why don't you talk about that for me?
I need this to be someone. I need this to, the first word that comes to mind, words. I need this to stay afloat.
Right.
It was almost like that feeling of drowning, which is so silly because I was still earning a very good living. I didn't need to feel that. I just needed to be honest.
Right.
But it felt like, in a sense, that this was keeping my head above water. And so the meaning of the money changed. It was that extrinsic worth. And because I had zero inside, I had very little. I never knew that I was enough, never knew that I was worthy. And so the money and the things, the lifestyle that money could afford me, the fancy dinners, I was a huge fan of going out to dinner.
Right.
I mean, if you pull up, the press release from my FBI arrest, one of the only real thing that they got me on, because they love saying, Mr. So-and-so spent a ton of money on this, that, and the other thing. I like to glamorize it. They said, I went out in Fairfield, Connecticut, and Manhattan for fancy dinners. And they're right. That's primarily what I spent the money on. I loved having that VIP status. And
Craig likes to eat.
You can tell because I'm such a large gentleman. I'm 5'4", 135 pounds, but I kept packing away. But it was the wine, it was the champagne, it was the ceremony of it all. And what I made that mean, that made me, it made me somebody of value. I'll never forget. So in one of the restaurants I went to in Greenwich, I look across first off, I was thrilled that they put me downstairs because there was an upstairs and a downstairs, and you wanted to sit downstairs. That's where you were seen. To say this out loud now, to hear it, is so stupid. But it was so important to me at the time. But I look over and Stephen Cohen of SAC Capital Advisors, which is now 72 Point, I believe, the billionaire hedge fund manager, is 2 tables away from me. And I just was like, I'm look at where I'm sitting.
Right.
And, that was so important to me.
Again, it's a detailed, methodical way that you did this. Did your real job suffer because of the fraud that you were committing or not? Or were you able to?
It was already suffering. It was already suffering because of the lifestyle that I was living. And now that I've got, this free money coming in, the lifestyle actually amped up. So I was already living an outrageous lifestyle, but now that I've got these ill-gotten gains coming in, it was like I turned the volume up even higher. I was, mine went to 11. I turned it even higher. And so the job was already suffering, but honestly, I would say that it did suffer as a result of this because, you start getting like blinders. And I started really just focusing on the fraud and what can I do to scale it? How can I make more?
Well, I guess that I'm sorry I'm asking these questions because it helps me work through some of the stuff that I was going through too. You mentioned blinders. And I remember that. I remember because I lied to everybody. All right. No one knew. My family knew that I was a criminal. Everyone else, I had told them I was a fraud consultant. I just didn't tell them on which side of the fraud equation that I was on. So my wife leaves me and I get this fiance and she didn't know what I was doing. And I had these blinders on at the same time that obviously I was damaging the relationship. There was no doubt about that. But I blinded myself to that. I kept telling myself, everything's fine, everything's fine, everything's fine. And looking back now with you, can you see that the relationship you had with your wife at that point in time was being damaged or not?
Oh, I can see now with the gift of hindsight. Absolutely. I was, any relationship, friends, family, romantic, the foundation of that is trust.
Right.
And I'm lying every single day. She knew I was doing something because I'm driving all over the place, picking up this equipment and shipping it. There's cardboard boxes everywhere. There's FedEx labels everywhere. So she knew I was up to something. And she'd say, are you sure what you're doing is okay? And I would just be like, it's fine. Stop asking. It's
famous
totally
last
fine.
words right there. It's fine. Everything's fine.
It's fine is one of the worst statements you can ever make. Like if your significant other, you say, how you doing? I'm fine. You're like, ooh, that's not good.
Yeah. What's going on? Everything's fine. Just don't worry about it. Nothing's going on. Everything's fine.
And it was, so I just, I'm lying through my teeth. my family knew that I was doing something because I got this money coming in and stuff like that. And I said that I had started this like business, and that in my rationalizing, twisted mind, I thought it was like this, I was fulfilling that entrepreneurial dream that I had. And so I just, I said, I started a business and it's instantly profitable, instant profit coming in.
You get the call from the FBI.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I've had the knocks. I was never fortunate enough to have the call because I think they knew that I would not stick around where they call first. I have a bit of rabbit in me. You get the call. The stomach, I know what that feels like because I've had the knock. So the stomach drops out right there, right?
Go on. I had to take it up off the floor.
How long after that were you arrested?
I lived in Connecticut at the time. My office was in Manhattan. It took me about an hour to get home. Okay. So probably by the time, it was probably an hour and 10 minutes, from voicemail to handcuffs. It's probably about an hour and 10.
Your wife had no idea what that was going on.
I feel terrible because she's the one who opened the door. They, oddly enough, I know oftentimes they come at like 5:30 in the morning. They want to catch everybody off guard. They came at 8:30 in the morning.
That was very kind of them.
That was lovely of them.
Yes.
She's the one who opened the door. She said there was about 15 of them with assault rifles, pistols, shotguns, all pointed at her face and her chest with the search warrant.
And I'm sorry to chuckle at it, but I work with the FBI. These days, I consult with them, and we have meetings and lunches and stuff like that. And I sometimes get to teach at Quantico. But one of the agents was telling me back a couple years ago when they had all that hubbub about the no knock warrants, that what happens is typically it's 6 a.m. And what happens is you'll get the 15 agents and they'll knock. It'll be bam, 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 3 knocks. You count to 3. And if there's no answer, you go in. And that's not counted as a no knock at that point. So you're very lucky. It was not 6 a.m. and it was not the bam, 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 1, 2, 3, crash the door in.
Because I'm always 3 seconds away from my front door. We all are. We're all always 3 seconds away.
Yeah.
So she's the one who had to deal with that. She's the one who had to sit there and watch them. I'm going to give them credit. It wasn't like the movies. I don't know about your experience. They didn't rip everything apart. They were actually very respectful in their search.
They were not respectful for me. They came into the house, about 15 of them. They sat me down on the sofa with cuffs on. My fiance, she was in tears at this point in time because she had no idea what the hell I was doing for a living. They took that Philippe off her wrist, the one I had stolen. They took that one off her wrist. And as I was sitting on the couch and they were going through all the cabinets and everything else, about every 10 or 15 seconds, they would come up to me with some piece of evidence. What's this? And I would go like, I don't know. That was it. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there going, man, I'm in a shitload of trouble here. So that was my search thing. And so your guys were very kind. Did they treat her well and everything or not?
My understanding is that they did. Okay. They did treat her well. I didn't get to see her during any of this. So They saw me pull up and they immediately guided me into a, not even a parking spot. They just were like, park here, immediately, put the cuffs on me. Right. And there's a courtyard between us. So I didn't even see her. They wanted to make sure there was no co-conspiracy. So
how long had you been married at that point in time?
We were only married a couple of years.
Okay.
We were only married a couple of years. We dated really quick. It was a very quick dating and then right into a marriage. But yeah, it was, quite honestly, our relationship was already on the rocks in the first place.
Now, is that because of the stuff that you were doing, or it was just not going to work out to begin with?
I think it was just not going to work out to begin with.
Okay. All right. So you get your ass arrested. Did you get bond or not?
Yes.
Another plus. So you didn't have rabbit in you.
So my ex-wife and my father posted $100,000. So I was able to, I want to bring something up. You might find this really funny. So after the cuts go on and we're in the back of the unmarked car, I put my, right to, to silence into play. But we were chatting about all sorts of things. And the guy brings up the FBI agent in the backseat. He goes, just so you know, goes, do you know the government's in a shutdown right now? And I was like, yeah, it's all over the news. He's like, yeah, everybody there volunteered to arrest you for no pay.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
And I'm like, what? So I bring that up because, to your point, like you said, a bonus that I got bond, it's amazing that there was a judge, that there were people at the courthouse. I guess everybody kind of, I don't know if there were other things going on that they, rallied, but nobody got paid that day for any of this. So I was really fortunate that I wasn't arrested and there was nobody there to process me. And I just would sit in a cell for God knows how long.
Yeah. So, but you did, I mean, so you went through processing. That's what, 6 hours anyway. That's a nice taste of things if you've never been through that before, Well, I'll tell you, when the guy was putting me through processing, he does the whole, when you strip search, and it's like you run the fingers through the hair and the, fingers in the mouth. And he says, turn around, spread your cheeks, squat and cough. And I was like, what? And he says it again. And I still, I knew they were English, but I've never heard those words strung together in that way. And I just was like, I'm sorry, I'm not getting this. And he said it again. And I said, I was not picking up on it. And the man just screamed at me. Turn around, squat, spread your cheeks, cough. And I was like, okay, I got you. I get it now. I get it.
I get it.
Obviously, you like looking at starfishes. I get it.
Yeah. So. Okay, you don't have to yell. I'll do it. Oh my God, the laughter in the background is the best.
Yeah. So
we're adding more of that now.
The thing is I remember that too. I do. I was so shocked. I was like, well, I'd rather show him my back end than my front end because I only liked about 2 inches being born a woman. So,
that's a taste of things to come, like you said. And it's just one of the most humiliating things to go through.
And I joke about it, but I don't think that people understand how traumatic that, not that I didn't deserve it. All right. But that's an extremely traumatic thing. Now, the thing is, and I don't know if you got to that point, but the more you go through it, you develop a very morbid sense of humor with some of these guards. So by the time, I go to prison, I escape from prison, then I have to go through this whole rigmarole again. The second time around, hell, I'm used to it. I know what's coming. The guard looks at me. He's like, bend over, squat, cough. And I looked at him. I was like, if I do that, a pea's going to fall out. And he was like, what? I'm like, I'm just saying, you like peas? So, I mean, this is what happens with inmates. But it's, I can't really overstate how traumatic that really is if you've never had anything like that done before.
It is, I would say, from, getting that voicemail to the handcuffs actually going on. I think there's a trauma involved in that for somebody who's never been handcuffed before. They were heavier and colder than I expected. Oh, yeah. And the hopelessness and helplessness that comes along with that, with your arms pinned behind your back. I mean, it's just a terrible, terrible feeling. Then going through that processing, it's just kind of, for me, I just felt like this was a journey of different rock bottoms. Every time I kind of maybe thought that the ground was underneath me, it would just fall out again, and you just find a whole new low.
Yeah. Did you know the entire time you were going to go to prison, or did you have hope that you would, have home confinement or probation or something like that?
So it was interesting. I had my attorney was, doing a great job of setting expectations. He's just basically like, you're going to jail. He's just,
you're gone. You're fucked.
I feel like attorneys usually are the other way, where they're like, oh, you're not going to do it. And then they're like, ooh, you might face a little bit of time. Ooh, they backtrack. Ooh, you're fucked. It eventually gets to that. Mine started with, you're fucked from the get-go. And so I had him. But interestingly enough, my pretrial probation officer, he was like, I read your case. He's like, you're not a big deal. You should get probation. So I've got.
That's very kind of a probation officer to say that.
I got two different whispers at polar ends of the scale, and I didn't know who to believe. Obviously, I was hoping for the one, but I've got the other person telling me, like, you're going away, and end of story, deal with it.
Did your wife, did she stick with you? Or did she leave you immediately? Did she stick with you through part of it? I mean,
she stuck with me. Well, part of it. She left me on December 22nd in the prison visiting room. So I was in Otisville for just over 4 months at that point. And then, the visiting room's packed because it's right before the holidays. I knew something was going on from just the tone of her emails and how she sounded on the phone. And she was really she was holding back. She didn't want to come out and say it. She was holding back. And I kind of kept digging and digging. And then finally, just through tear-filled eyes, she said, "Craig, I'm leaving you."
Right.
That was just, I talked about like the bottoms falling out. That was just another one of those bottoms falling out.
Did you, I guess you got to self-report to prison or not?
I did. Another bonus. So I did. I had to be there before noon. I think it was, August 13th.
Well, I say it's a bonus. Again, if they're expecting me to show up at prison, I'm probably not going to do that. You're probably going to have to come and get me.
The rabbit in you sit around.
No, I just don't think that the institution would benefit me if I were to show up of my own accord. So, come and get me. It's better like that, but
I was the polar opposite, I think, of you on a lot of this journey. I was just paranoid. I was I was an utter sheer mess. I was terrified of what was going to happen for a long time. So my pretrial probation officer, a different one than the one who said I was going to, get probation or should get probation. My initial one told me, she goes, "You're going to want to look at TV and you're going to want to do research into prisons. Don't do that. It's going to scare the hell out of you." So I listened to her. And I did that. But I didn't know there was such a thing as a federal prison camp.
Oh, yeah.
And that I would have an opportunity to do that. And it was months after I was arrested where I literally sat there. Again, I'm not a big dude. I'm 5'4". At the time of my arrest, I was 140 pounds. With the stress, I lost 30 pounds. I went down to 100. I checked in, when I went through that receiving a departure, I checked in at 109 pounds. I graduated high school at 115.
Okay.
So I was, I thought I was going to get raped and beaten every single day.
Right. Well, everyone thinks that. That's the thing. Everyone thinks that. That's not an uncommon thought. If I'd done a little research, I would have known that there were different levels, that, camp, it was most likely where I was going, but I didn't. I listened to her. I was a very good pre-inmate. I'm like, she said, "Don't do it." I'm not going to do it. So I'm guessing, because I like I said, I didn't self-report, but how stressful, what's the thought process as you're driving to the prison, as you're walking up to the gate, knowing that, hey, I'm going to be here for a couple of years?
It's almost indescribable. So my stepmother and my father picked me up, and we started making the drive from Connecticut up to Otisville. It was a couple of hours, and I'll kind of share it this way. When I was a kid, I took swim lessons, and I hated it. I absolutely hated those swim lessons, and I pretended when I was in the back of my mom's car that I could count the rotations of the tires, and each single rotation was getting me closer to that swim lesson. And sitting in the back of my stepmother's car, I was doing the same exact thing.
Okay.
And I was just like counting the rotations of going to prison, and it was terrifying. And my wife was, she had brought a banana along. She's like, "You need to eat something because you don't know when you're going to eat next." And I couldn't even get half a banana down. And I just kind of sat in silence, and we had that weird, awkward talk. And at one point I looked over, my stepmother was driving, and I looked over, she's doing 90. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, who races to prison?
We got to get this sumbitch there.
I didn't realize she had I didn't realize she had such a lead foot. She's got, her nice BMW, and she's just ripping down the highway. And I was like, who the hell races to federal prison?
She's like, "Greg, we love you, but we got shit to do today.
We have lunch. We have lunch reservations."
Right.
So we do pull up, and we find the camp. And, I kind of look around. I was like, "Oh, this doesn't look so bad." But they say, "No, you have to check in over there at the medium security facility." So then we go to the medium security, and it is what you see on TV with the barbed wire fences and the guard towers and the whole nine. And we grab this parking spot, and then this truck pulls up to us and knocks on the window and says, "Hey, you're in the warden's parking spot." So now we have to move. So this is just adding to my absolute
first
terror.
Impressions.
Yeah, right. I'm really hitting the ball out of the park. But it's just surreal. And quite frankly, and this was actually part of we may or may not get into this, but like after I got out and part of that reinventing my life, I had to address what I'm about to say. My body and mind shut down. It went into protective mode. So I was there, but I wasn't fully experiencing everything that was going on. Right. I was still scared, but it was like I was almost watching as a third party, if that makes sense, as somebody else went through this process.
It does. It makes sense.
So I was like I said, I was present in there, but I wasn't. And I think our bodies and minds do that in very traumatic events. They shut down to protect us because I think the level of cortisol and the things that can happen to us physically, the risk can be too high. So our body just shuts down.
Is it when your wife leaves you? I mean, where do you hit rock bottom along this path?
There were, like I said, all those different bottoms. And my wife leaving me was really a tremendous catalyst for what came next.
Sure.
And I'll share the story. I started meditating in prison. I always wanted to meditate, but I always made an excuse. I didn't have enough time. Well, as you know, there's plenty of time in prison. You got to fill that time really quickly. So I started my meditation practice. And one day while I was meditating, my mind showed me a short film of what my own side would look like. And it was me in one of the basements in my houses. And I walked in. It was like I was watching like a movie or a stage. And this character comes in from stage right. He's got a black hood over his head. And I knew it was me just because I could feel the resignation in his shoulders and just the shame in his body. And he comes in and he sits on a chair and he reaches under the chair and he pulls out a gun and he puts it in his mouth and he pulls the trigger. And it showed me that. And I did what we would all do, and I waved it off. I was like, I don't want to think about this. I don't want to see this. I went about my meditation. Well, the next day when I sat down, my mind showed me that short film again. And then it showed me on the third day. And eventually my mind played the short film of my own side every second of every day for 4 months straight. I would go to bed at night wishing and praying that the hand of death would kill me. And I would awake every single morning disappointed to see the light of a new day.
Right.
And the film started becoming very real and raw and visceral, where I could feel my footfall. I could feel the chair underneath my butt. I could feel the weight of the gun, and I could feel the linen cloth in my mouth as I put the gun in, and I could feel the cold steel barrel. I could feel the bullet going into my head and exiting my head. It was as if it was happening in real time. And that's when I began to plan how I was going to kill myself. And that was my absolute rock bottom.
So you, and I guess, I mean, we know you're a planner. So it's, I went through that. I didn't go through what you went through. It wasn't when I was in prison. I was busily screwing over the Secret Service while working for them. And, I hit what I thought was my rock bottom. I was nowhere near it at that point in time. And, with me, I always had that, kind of romantic mind to me. And so I go down to the grocery store and I'm like, fuck it. I'm done. And I remember I bought some razor blades, was drinking heavily, came home, and I was in this apartment. I'd already lost my home and all that. I was in this apartment, and remember I ran lukewarm water, because I'd always read when you hit your wrist, lukewarm water, it won't hurt as bad. So I ran a tub full of lukewarm water, and I was laying there in the tub, and I was drinking it, and got the razor blades and opened the pack up, and I looked down, and I shit thee not, the name brand of the razor blade was Happy Time Razors. And I sat there looking at that for a second, and I was like, there ain't no fucking way I'm going to slice my wrist with a Happy Time razor. They'll make fun of me forever. And that, no kidding about it, that's the reason I did not kill myself that night, was why. I look at suicide these days. I'm that guy. It's a horrible thing. It's a horrible thing. But there was this, I think his name's Jason Mraz. I hope I'm getting the artist right. And I was watching an interview.
Mraz.
I was watching an interview, and he was talking about how he was suicidal. And he says that in the interview, he's talking, he says, he said, I chose not to commit suicide. And he makes the statement, he's like, not that I don't think it's a valid choice sometimes. He says, I do. He says, in the future, who knows? But at that point in time, I chose not to commit suicide. And today, and it may be screwed up, probably is screwed up for me to think like that. But today, I'm really of that same opinion. I agree. It hurts your family, hurts everything else. If you're religious, it sends you to the, yeah. But at the same time, I'm like, sometimes it's valid. Sometimes it's valid. For you, I don't think it was at all.
I didn't want to die. I just didn't want to feel like that anymore.
So you started.
That's a tremendous difference.
It is. So you started to dwell on your own suicide and plan it out how it was going to happen. It started to consume you, I assume.
Absolutely did. As it does, the shame that comes with that. But I'll tell you, you said something when you shared that story. Thank you for sharing your story and the fact that we can actually have a laugh about it.
Right.
You talked about going through earlier, you get a morbid sense of humor with the COs, but I think you and I having both stared at this version of ourselves, being able to have a laugh about it for other people who can't see the laughter in it right now, I think it's beneficial.
Yeah,
to have these open and candid conversations.
But I mean, that's the thing, right? I mean, I think you found that out too. I mean, we can be at rock bottom. We can think the world's about to end, but the thing is that the world's going to keep on going, and whether you like it or not, it's going to take you along with it.
We are an active participant, whether or not it's voluntary or not.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So, I watched your TED Talk. You're at that bottom. And then something happens. What happened?
I'll tell you, this was the equivalent of a Happy Time razor for me. I got an email from my best friend of over 30 years. His name is Sean. It was on a Wednesday afternoon. Said one thing, hey man, can I come for a visit this weekend? And I thought, hell yes, you can come for a visit, because while I'm planning this, while I'm consumed by this short film, I don't tell anybody in prison. I'm bottling it all up, because you know what happens if you mention
they're going to put you in a little turtle suit.
Yeah, they're going to put you in a turtle suit. So I'm alone at rock bottom with the man who was responsible for all this. And I hated that man. The idea of being locked in solitary with him scared the hell out of me. So I just bottled it up. No phone calls, no emails. Didn't tell anybody in prison. And I don't know about you, but I met some of the nicest people that I could imagine when I was there, that in another circumstance, I could have very easily shared with them.
I want you to continue, but just so the audience knows what goes on. When you become suicidal in prison, if you are that person that decides to go to a CO and tell them that you're feeling suicidal, what they do is they load your little ass up. They put you in sometimes it's literally a padded room. They take your clothes off. They give you this little gown type thing. You get a mat. You don't get a sheet because you can make a rope out of that sheet, and you stay there. There's nothing at all except you in the room and your thoughts. So it is not a good environment. And that's what happens, because they think that you're a danger to yourself. So you're not going to kill yourself. No, they're not going to let that shit happen. You're going to be locked away, and you're going to go crazy after a while. So I can't blame you for not saying anything. Hell, I wouldn't have said anything either.
I was terrified of that, and thank you for clarifying that, because I don't think people know that. I don't think people get the extent of that. So I'm glad that you shared it. So I bottled it all up, and then I get this email from Sean. Well, the visiting room's not monitored, and I trust Sean implicitly with my life, 30 plus years of friendship. I know I can share with him that things are not good. And so it takes forever for Saturday to arrive. I mean, it's just like, it's the longest few days that I've ever experienced in my life, but I start feeling a little bit of hope where I was like, I was walking around like a club soda bottle with a cap on. And just, the pressure that was building up was absolutely insane. But I get to take that cap off with Sean's visit. So, I watch him park his truck, make a long walk up the hill. He comes into the visiting room. We hug, which is amazing because there's not a lot of touch in prison. Not that you want to be touching those guys anyway, but to have that connection, that human connection with somebody is amazing. He buys food from the vending machine because obviously we can't touch money because they think that means you're planning an escape. So I'm like B12 and C37, my cheeseburger and root beer. And all the while, I'm just like, I get to share with him that I'm sorry, that things aren't good, that I need his help. So we heat up our burgers in the microwave, we sit down and we open everything up and it's my time. And I'm so excited that I get to share this. It's like one of the most hopeful that I have felt in this entire journey. And I opened my mouth to speak and that motherfucker cuts me off. He's got work issues. He's got money issues. He's getting a divorce. And there's a sadness in Sean's eyes and in his voice that in our 30 plus years of friendship, I have never seen or heard. And that was the moment my life changed because I realized I had value and worth outside of all the things that I thought had always made me valuable and worthy. I was a friend and nothing more.
See, I think that's important. I mean, right? I mean, you were, and I before you came on, I do this segment called Art of Accountability. Little tidbits on how I've tried to make myself a better person and realizations and things like that. And that idea of wallowing in self-pity, and it's a very comfortable thing. I mean, you don't have to, you can just sit there and wallow and people will feel sorry for you and you don't have to get up and do anything or act, but you were, let's be honest, you were doing that. I did the exact same thing.
Oh yeah.
But you had a friend that needed you. And that shocked you out of that where you had to, hey, my friend of 30 years needs me. And you responded to that. That's a very admirable, I can't even say it, admirable thing.
It was, it snapped me the hell out of it so quickly. It was just like, I need to be here for him. I need to listen to what is going on because he needs me. Sean could have walked like 100 feet to his brother's house. And he's very close with his brother. They were, literally next door neighbors to have this conversation with him. Instead, he drives 2 hours to go to federal prison, which, by the way, is not a fun place to visit either. He made this conscious choice to actually take 4 hours out of his day of driving to come see his friend. And so I just sat there and listened. I'll tell you what I think is one of the most interesting things about this is after he was done talking, we just went right into what friends do, what's Rob up to, what's Chris up to, what the boys up to, how's this, how's that. And I never even shared with him the suicidal thoughts that I was having.
Good.
Because I didn't have to, because I got every single thing that I needed.
Right.
And it was about him and it wasn't about me. And it was, to your point, that was me stepping out of the pity party.
That's it. I mean, that's it. So is he okay now?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally great. Yeah.
That's that life will go on whether you want it to or not.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. He had no choice. You're going through. Whoever said it, the only way out is through.
Right.
We all have to do that.
You finally get out of the self-pity. You work through that. What did you do in prison after that? I know what you did before that. What did you do after that?
That was, I'd already started meditating, but my meditation had really kind of turned and had a little bit different meaning to it. It wasn't just like this thing that I should do. It became this thing that I needed to do to understand myself better, to understand why I sacrificed so much for so little. I started journaling. I started a gratitude practice. Those are the 3 foundational practices that I started in prison that 10 plus years later, it's extremely rare I miss a day. Right. That was the start of the foundation. And that journaling opened up a whole avenue of thought for me where I started asking myself questions like, why did I make those choices? What was I running from? And, my very first real epiphany aha moment was when I was sitting journaling and I was still in the pity party. So let's be honest. I don't think you just leap out of the pity party. I think it's a stroll out of it. You have to put one foot after the other. You have to do one right thing after the other and keep walking out of it. So even after Sean's visit, I was still in that because I was journaling about being financially ruined, getting divorced, wishing I was home with my dog and my cat and my wife, who is now my ex-wife, wishing I didn't make the choices I made, wishing I wasn't a federally convicted felon, all of these things. And that epiphany moment was all of a sudden, was like every single thing that I'm fighting against is reality.
Right.
And I sat there and I wrote, I accept that I'm in prison. I accept that I'm getting divorced. I accept that I'm financially ruined. I wrote about 3/4 of a page in those black and white composition notebooks that you get on commissary that I still use to this day for journaling. Wrote about three-quarters of a page of things I had to accept that I was, trying to fight against that can't be anything other than they were. And inside prison, a weight came off my shoulders and I felt freedom because I was no longer fighting a past that can't be anything other than it is. And I was no longer staining my future with that past. I gave myself a baseline.
Right.
Granted, it was a crappy baseline. I was in prison and I was financially ruined, but I had a legitimate starting point as opposed to just wallowing in that self-pity. So that was my first major epiphany.
Nice. I like that. I like that you said the gratitude. I really do, because looking back at my life, I was always the guy that was not very grateful for the life that I had, that I chose to not have because of crime. Today, I'm the guy that I lead a very blessed life. I do, but I'm the guy that still believes I don't deserve that life, but I'm damn grateful for it every single day, every day. The FBI, my wife, my friends, my family, the cybersecurity community, they took me in with open arms. Knowing who the hell I was, they took me in with open arms and gave me that chance. And they continue to give me that chance today. And that's something that I'd always struggled with. I went through, I lied to get the drug program. All right. And absolutely lied my ass off to get it. But best lie I ever told, man. It was, you've been in feds. It was, a 9-month course of cognitive behavioral therapy, and you go through it. And that absolutely helps me. And they told me in no uncertain terms, you have problems with gratitude. You absolutely have problems with empathy. You are not humble at all. And they had a whole list of stuff that I had wrong with me. And I remember the first time they approached me with that, I was like, no, I'm fine. But by the end of it,
back to that, I'm fine.
Oh yeah, I'm fine. By the end of it, I was like, and I still struggle with those things, still do. But I know I struggle with those, and I think that helps me at the end of the day, And when you're talking about journaling, my God, the importance of that, of just, if you can't talk to a counselor, at least you're getting it out on paper. And as you're getting it out, you're able to process everything that's going on at the same time. That idea of gratitude, of recognizing the things that you need to be grateful for. It's hard to overstate the importance of those things. It truly is.
It's absolutely extraordinary. And I want to just rewind for half a second.
Sure.
I just want to invite you to think about the fact everything that you listed, your relationship with the FBI, your work in cybersecurity, your wife, all of the things that you're blessed for, the fact that they are in your life, let that serve as evidence that you are deserving of them. Because if you weren't, they wouldn't be there.
I appreciate it.
So just a little connecting of the dots. Sometimes we miss that, and that gratitude, that journaling. Like I said, I rarely miss a day. And something I really love to do with gratitude is I am grateful for this morning's sunrise. Wonderful, right? But then I ask myself, why? Why am I grateful for this morning's sunrise? Because I'm alive to see it. Because I live somewhere where I have a beautiful access to a sunrise. Because you just listing all of these things, because I'm awake to do it. I decide to get up this early. But when you start unpacking the things that you're grateful for by asking why, it opens up a whole new world of gratitude, and it really solidifies the practice. It's been something that's been great for me.
I mean, I agree. I absolutely agree with you. So 2 years, you get out. What happens to Craig then?
I was so fortunate. You were talking about, employment earlier and how challenging it is. One of my friends inside Otisville knew a guy who owned a gym in the Lower East Side of Manhattan.
Okay.
And this guy was coming for a visit. And one of the guards, one of the COs, let me sit in on this visit. So I had a 5 to 7 minute interview in the prison visiting room. And the owner of this gym, he said, email me when you got out and I will set you up with a job. And I was so excited and I was so grateful. And then, when I get out to the halfway house, I emailed the guy and I start thinking about it, the voice that we all have. I was like, that guy's not going to get back to me. This was all just BS. It's not going to happen. And he did. And he got me, he offered me a job. So here I am, 7 figures in debt, making $12 an hour, working the front desk at a gym. And I couldn't be any happier. It got me out of the halfway house. It allowed me to, find my voice again, because I was still really consumed by shame. I still had a lot of work to do on that shame, and being behind the front desk and meeting and greeting all the people forced me to have these conversations, and it allowed me to find my voice. And it also, I loved the job, but let's be honest, it wasn't that mentally taxing. So I could do all of that deep inner work and work on the book. Nice. I lived for 3.5 years. My aunt used to say, I think she almost got worried about me. She's like, you live like a monk. I didn't watch TV. I didn't go out. I didn't date. I mean, I ate like simple food. I was just focused on doing the inner work and getting the book done.
So the book is Blank Canvas.
Yeah, Blank Canvas, How I Reinvented My Life After Prison. I started writing it in Otisville in the library in one of those black and white composition notebooks. And I'll share the story because it really just sets, I think, the backbone for the book. So here I am, handwriting the whole thing out, and I'm writing about getting divorced. I'm writing about getting arrested. I'm writing about being financially ruined, all these things that had just literally happened. They were fresh. I was pouring bleach on an open wound. I mean, it just hurt like absolute hell. And I start thinking about it, and I go, who the hell's going to read this thing? I don't know what I'm doing. I've never written a book before. It's impossible to get something published. I'm torturing myself by writing these things. This is the stupidest thing I've ever done. And I threw my pen and I said, why am I doing this? Well, my heart, that when I was arrested by the FBI and said, I told you so, because when I got that voicemail, it literally said, I told you so. And the same heart that when I committed the fraud kept on telling me, stop, don't do this. This is not the way for you. My heart spoke and said one thing, and it spoke crystally clear, and I flipped the page, and I still have the journal to this day. It said, you're doing this to help one person. And I realized here I am, 1/2 a foot out of rock bottom in prison, but what I'm doing here can hopefully help another human being.
Right.
And I flipped the page back to what I was writing, and the pain wasn't so bad because I was carrying that burden for somebody other than myself. That was a huge step out of that pity party. And that fueled me for the 6 years from the first word written to the book actually being published. That was to help that one person. So Blank Canvas starts with my arrest, the voicemail that I shared with you earlier, and just chronicles my bullet train to rock bottom and how I have slowly reinvented my life afterwards.
I appreciate that. I have a thought, and I'm just curious if your answer is going to match with my thought. But what do you think the most important thing is for someone that is trying to reinvent their life, as the subtitle of your book says, that person who's going through it, who's made those bad decisions, who has reached, because I absolutely believe you have to reach rock bottom, who has reached rock bottom and doesn't know what the hell to do?
I would like that person to fully understand and embrace this. Your past cannot define you without your consent.
I like that. I like that. I truly do. I do.
Who was yours?
I'm the guy that I was the guy that always justified what I was doing. I always did it because of somebody else. You know, when you mentioned your wife, and I said, "Oh, it's always a woman." It was always a woman. You know, I always used that as a way to justify my crime. So with me, it was accepting that the reason that I was in prison was me. You know, that I was accountable, that I was the master of my fate, that I chose to do every single thing along the way. I'm still the guy. It's interesting that you know your past doesn't define you unless you let it. I like that because I have, and there's a reason for this, but I'm the guy who has not forgiven myself. I think I'll get there, but I use that as a kind of a springboard to absolutely dive into doing the right damn thing every day. You know, I've not forgiven myself and am not ready to do that. I think, like I said, I think I'll get there, but I use that as that catalyst to where every single morning I wake up, what can I do today? Like yesterday, I talked to a gentleman, reached out to me on LinkedIn. He had seen that Jordan Peterson episode of mine. He had watched the Lex Friedman one too. And he was like, look, he said, I've got a lot of trouble. I'd just like to talk to you. I was like, yeah, man, let's talk. Well, I didn't know it was going to be a 2-hour conversation, but it was. And the dude, he talked straight to me for an hour and 40 minutes. And the only thing I said during that hour and 40 minutes was, yep, go ahead. You're fine. Go ahead. And but it was that journaling thing you talked to. He hadn't really got any of this stuff out before at all. He was going through a codependent relationship, an abusive relationship, and everything else. And you know, at the end of the day, my thing was, dude, let that go. And it was this idea that, like you just mentioned, your past doesn't have to define who you are unless you let it. And that's pretty much what I told the guy. You know, you don't have to continue on like this. You don't have to accept these things. You know, you can, just because you've made an error in the past, and we all make mistakes. You're not defined by your mistakes. You're defined by how you handle those mistakes and overcome those mistakes and what happens after that. And I truly do. I appreciate you saying that, because I think that's 100% true. I really do.
Thank you for that. And you know, what you just said, I want to, for me, kind of reframe it a little bit. I used to say, and so my second epiphany, I'm going to dovetail this into my second epiphany because it ties to what you were just saying earlier. But I used to say, you know, I made a mistake. And a huge component and a huge transformational moment for me was, I didn't make a mistake, I made a choice. Yeah. You know, to me, a mistake is I put sugar on my eggs instead of salt. You know, that's a mistake, but I made a conscious, what you said earlier, that I was very intentional. I'm a planner. I mean, this wasn't just a mistake. This was a well thought out choice. Right. And that second epiphany for me was, you know, even after Sean's visit, after accepting reality and all that stuff, I was still kind of pointing fingers. I was still playing the victim. You know, the FBI did obscure some evidence. The prosecutor lied at sentencing. These are all very true things. Right. You know, these are very true things. And I was hiding behind that still. And it was, well, again, in prison, one of these epiphany moments where I go, holy shit, I knocked the first domino down. If I didn't knock the first domino down by making the choice that I made, that prosecutor would never in a million years know my name, because there's no reason for our paths to cross. The FBI agent, same, everything that happened after I knocked that first domino down, to what you said earlier, that's on me. Mm-hmm. It's extreme responsibility. And that's been a huge commitment. Again, in prison, I felt like freedom when I realized there's nobody else but me. I could say my wife, I could say this, I could say that. It was all me. And that's very liberating.
Well, I mean, it's the thing. If you accept that responsibility, what are you going to do at that point? Are you going to sit there and say, yeah, I did it, and then not do anything? No, you're going to get off your ass and do something.
Well, I'm like, I have goosebumps. I love that you just said that, because when it hit me that I knocked the first domino down, I'm responsible for my life. The very next thing I wrote was, okay, what do you do now? I wrote that in my journal.
Yeah.
I remember I was like, what do I do next? And I was like, because now I'm responsible for my life. I'm the one who's responsible for putting this thing back together.
Yeah.
Nobody else.
So you wrote the book. You've given a TED. What are you doing now? That's what I want to know.
So I am. You may not know this. You and I have shared a stage together.
I did not know that. Which the TED stage or what?
No, we both spoke in Pittsburgh, IIA ACFE.
Did we?
We did. I missed
Shit, I didn't know that.
I think you were the morning, and I think I was like the closer. But so I'm a speaker. I speak to the II, the fraud organizations. I do some of the corporate events. So a keynote speaker. I am a coach. I call myself a reinvention architect. I only work with less than a handful of people to help them reinvent their lives. And I'm working on my second, third, and fourth book.
Dude, you're putting me to shame, man.
Please. So virtual event for Michigan.
Okay.
Another virtual event for, oh my God, I should know this, San Antonio.
Nice. I'm in Austin next week.
Oh, beautiful. I'm in Nashville in April.
I'm in Nashville in April or May. I forget which one.
Well, let's touch base and see if we're
let's do that. Where do you live now?
I'm in Connecticut.
In Connecticut. So and for those who have not watched Craig's TED Talk, check it out on YouTube. Check out his other podcast appearances. By all means, here's the thing. We're talking to a man here who has went through the shit. All right? And I don't say that lightly, because when you go through this, even though if it's your own making, as it usually is with most human beings, when you go through the shit and you come out of it, you have an insight and an understanding of being a human that most people do not. And if you're able to share that insight and understanding in a way that people can read, can hear, can learn from, that makes you a very valuable human being. This book that Craig has, I absolutely recommend that you pick it up, because if you've not been through the shit yet, chances are you're going to go through it before this life ends. Chances are you've already been through the shit, and you may need a little handle on, hey, how have other people, picked themselves up on it? How have they worked through it? How are they continuing to work through it? That's what the Brett Johnson Show, I'm adamant that this is what this show is going to turn into. Kind of a chicken soup for the soul for Bretty. That's what I'm adamant for. But, Craig he's a good guy. He's a good guy. I wish to hell that I speak on cybersecurity, cybercrime. I share some of my story and how I'm coming out of it. But I wish that I was doing the type of speeches that he does, because to me, that's where the value of being a person is, in helping your fellow man. I help people, I absolutely do, but not on that level yet. And I just want you to know, Craig, I absolutely respect the hell out of you, man. I truly do.
I truly appreciate that, Brett. That means a lot, because you're somebody I admire. I follow you on LinkedIn. I'm really unbelievably grateful to have the opportunity to speak to you today. And I've loved our conversation, and I think
it's been great. If somebody wants you to speak for them, where do they contact you?
They can go to CraigStanland.com. Easy peasy.
That's easy peasy. CraigStanland.com. I'm assuming that you'll talk to about anybody, as long as that person is really needing help, because we know sometimes people just don't want help. They're not ready for that yet.
You have to want it. You can't, you can't force it. And you have to want it. You have to be wanting to do the work. And,
right.
And I think you touched on something. I love the fact that you talked to that guy for 2 hours, because, I have a call with somebody on Monday who's going through it right now.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to see where that goes. But it's something I think you definitely have, and something I have, is just to take that experience and give meaning to it to help others.
Absolutely.
Be able to alchemize that experience in a meaningful way that can positively impact somebody else.
I agree. I agree completely. Craig, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time out of your day to come in and talk to me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on. This has been awesome.
All right. So this is Craig Stanland, who has taken the time out to talk about how he found value for himself in prison, how he overcame being through the shit, how he's turned his life around, the book Blank Canvas, how I reinvented my life after prison. If you can reinvent your life after prison, let me tell you something. You can reinvent it anytime, anywhere, any age, any person. So please pick up this book. I think that it absolutely is a necessity to read this. My name is Brett Johnson. We're going to close out the Brett Johnson Show. And again, I cannot thank Craig enough for coming on and visiting. I truly do appreciate it. We close this show out the exact same way every single time. Stay safe out there. Stay secure. Stay vigilant. More importantly, this is the Brett Johnson Show. At the end of the day, just do the right damn thing. I'm Brett Johnson. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time.